She saved a freezing dog. Few days later, Korean Mafia Boss knocked her door and incredible thing happened. She saved a freezing dog from a winter storm. 3 days later, a Korean Mafia Boss knocked on her door, and the truth changed everything she thought she knew about kindness. The night the temperature plunged to bone-breaking cold, Amara was alone in her soup kitchen, feeding the wood stove one last split log before locking up. The wind outside didn't howl. It screamed, rattling the alley gate like something desperate trying to get in. Through the frost-fogged window, the streetlight flickered weak and uncertain, casting shadows that danced across snow falling in tiny, blade-sharp crystals. Amara lived simply. 2 rooms above the kitchen, warm quilts older than her lease, mismatched mugs hanging from hooks, and shelves lined with donated books she'd read 3 times each. The stove glowed amber in the corner, stubborn, reliable, always hungry for kindling. The whole place smelled like ginger broth and onions, the kind of warmth that settles into your bones and convinces you the world might be okay. She pulled her coat tighter, ready to climb the narrow stairs to her apartment when she heard it, a sound so faint it almost disappeared beneath the storm. Scrape, scrape. Then a whimper, soft, strained, like something was using its last bit of strength just to be heard. Amara froze. Her hand hovered over the light switch. Ignore it. It's just the wind. Just debris. But her feet were already moving toward the back door. The alley was brutal. The cold hit her face like a slap, and the wind stole her breath before she could pull her scarf up. Snow swirled in chaotic eddies, and the darkness between the buildings felt solid, thick. She squinted toward the pile of flattened cardboard boxes near the dumpster, the ones she'd stacked there earlier for recycling, and there, curled impossibly tight against the brick wall, was a dog. A large black dog, muscular and broad-shouldered, lying motionless except for the shallow rise and fall of his ribs. His fur was dusted white with frost, delicate as powdered sugar. His paws were stiff, pulled close to his body. His eyes were open, dark, unfocused, tired in a way that made Amara's chest tighten. "Oh, no," she whispered. "No, no, no." She dropped to her knees, ignoring the ice soaking through her jeans. The dog's ear twitched once, just once, but he didn't lift his head, didn't try to stand. Amara's mind raced. She'd seen this before, years ago, during a winter safety workshop at the community center. Her old instructor, a gruff paramedic named Chen, had drilled it into them. Cold exposure isn't loud, it's quiet, and if you rush the rescue, you can kill them just as fast as the cold will. She took a breath, steadied herself. "Okay, big guy," she said softly, keeping her voice calm even though her heart was hammering. "I'm going to help you, but we're doing this the right way." Amara didn't drag him, didn't try to pick him up, didn't rush him toward the heat. Instead, she did 3 things, carefully, methodically, the way she'd been taught. She grabbed the cardboard boxes and angled them around the dog's body, blocking the worst of the wind. She positioned herself between him and the alley opening, using her own coat as a windbreak. Then she pulled out her phone and called downstairs. "Dayun, I need you. Now. Bring towels, dry ones, and your thickest blanket." Dayun didn't ask questions. 30 seconds later, the back door creaked open, and her neighbor appeared, breath puffing white in the cold, arms loaded with fabric. Dayun took one look at the dog and nodded grimly. "Hypothermia?" "I think so." Together they wrapped the dog like a careful burrito, layering towels around his body without pressing too hard. They didn't put him directly against the stove. They didn't rub his limbs aggressively. Slow warmth, gentle insulation. The dog's breathing steadied, just a fraction. His eyes tracked Amara's hands, then her face, like he was trying to decide whether hope was something he could afford. Amara dialed the 24-hour animal clinic across town. The line rang twice before a calm voice answered. "Mountain View Veterinary Emergency. How can we help?" "I found a dog outside in the cold," Amara said, keeping her voice steady. "He's not moving much. Shallow breathing. Paws are stiff. I've got him wrapped and sheltered, but I don't know how long he's been out here." The nurse's tone shifted instantly, still calm but serious. "That sounds like cold exposure. Bring him in, but keep him insulated and move him slowly. Don't apply direct heat. We'll be ready. Daeun was already pulling the kitchen cart toward the door, the same one they used for supply deliveries. They lifted the dog together, keeping him bundled, and wheeled him inside. The kitchen was warm, but not stifling. The wood stove glowed softly in the corner, casting long shadows across the mismatched tables and hand-painted pottery on the shelves. It smelled like safety. Amara sat beside the dog, gently rubbing his shoulders through the towel. His breathing evened out. His eyes, still tired, followed her movements, studying her face like he was memorizing it. And that's when Amara noticed something strange. The dog wore a collar, sturdy, well-made, not frayed or cheap. But there was no name tag, no phone number dangling from a clip. Just a plain metal plate, stamped with a short code. JH21. Amara frowned. She tilted the plate toward the light, tracing the engraved letters with her thumb. Daeun, she said slowly. This isn't a name. It's a code. Daeun leaned closer, her expression unreadable. Like military? Or something else. The dog blinked once, slow and deliberate, as if acknowledging that she'd noticed. Amara's stomach tightened. This dog wasn't lost the way normal dogs get lost. He was placed. At the clinic, the vet scanned for a microchip but found nothing. That collar isn't standard, the vet murmured, running her hands over the dog's frame. But look at his posture. See how he watches your hands? He's been trained. Not for tricks. For work. Amara paid what she could. The vet discounted the rest when she mentioned the soup kitchen. You did the right thing, the vet said quietly. Slow warmth. No hot bath. No panic. People make that mistake all the time. You didn't. Amara nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. As she walked back into the winter night, the dog resting in a carrier beside her, she kept thinking about that metal plate. JH21. Not a pet. Not abandoned. Someone had trained this dog. Someone disciplined. Someone who marked their belongings with codes instead of names. And somewhere out there, that someone was watching. Amara just didn't know it yet. Hello, my friends and loved ones. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful story. As we continue this story, kindly take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and I love to always hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it at your end right now? Thank you for subscribing. The clinic was warmer than Amara expected, but it still smelled like antiseptic and worry. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she and Daeun wheeled the cart through the double doors, the dog still bundled in towels, his breathing shallow but steady. A veterinarian met them at the intake counter, middle-aged, efficient, with the kind of calm that only comes from years of emergencies. She gestured toward an exam room without a word, and Amara followed, pushing the cart carefully over the threshold. Tell me what you saw, the vet said, already pulling on gloves. Amara ran through it quickly. The alley, the frost on his fur, the stiff paws, the slow blinking. He wasn't shivering, she added. I remembered that's a bad sign. The vet nodded, unwrapping the towels with practiced gentleness. You're right. When the body stops shivering, it means it's shutting down. You did exactly what you should have. Shelter, gradual warmth, no hot bath. She ran her hands along the dog's ribs, checking his limbs. People panic. They think heat fixes cold. But if you warm someone or something too fast, you can send them into shock. The heart can't handle it. Daeun stood by the door, arms crossed, watching silently. The vet pressed her stethoscope to the dog's chest, listening. His heart rate's stabilizing. Breathing's improving. She glanced at Amara. You saved his life by not rushing. Amara exhaled. Tension she hadn't realized she was holding finally loosening in her chest. The vet reached for a handheld scanner and passed it slowly over the dog's shoulders, checking for a microchip. The device beeped once, then went silent. Nothing, the vet said, frowning. She checked again, running the scanner down his spine. Still nothing. She sat back on her heels, studying the dog with narrowed eyes. That collar isn't standard. And look, She gestured toward the dog's posture. Even lying down, he held himself with a strange kind of discipline. His eyes tracked Amara's movements, not frantically, but carefully, waiting, watching. He's been trained, the vet said quietly. Not for tricks, for work. See how he makes eye contact? How still he is? That's not natural behavior for a stray. Someone taught him that. Amara's throat tightened. She glanced at Dayun, who was staring at the collar plate, JH21, with an unreadable expression. Can you keep him overnight? Amara asked. The vet shook her head. He's stable. As long as he's kept warm and monitored, he'll recover faster in a quiet space. Just keep him away from direct heat sources and offer small amounts of water. If he's lethargic tomorrow, bring him back. Amara paid what she could at the front desk. $30, folded and worn. The receptionist hesitated, then glanced at the vet, who waved her hand. Discount the rest, the vet said. She runs the soup kitchen on Maple. The receptionist nodded and adjusted the bill without comment. As they wheeled the dog back toward the exit, Diane leaned close and whispered, Amara, this dog belongs to someone who doesn't want him traced. No chip, no name, just a code. She paused. You need to think about what that means. Amara didn't answer. She couldn't. Back at the soup kitchen, they set up a makeshift recovery corner near the wood stove, far enough that the heat wasn't direct, close enough that the warmth filled the space. Amara lined an old blanket inside a low crate, and they settled the dog inside. He didn't resist, didn't whine, just curled into the blanket and rested his head on his paws, eyes half closed. Amara sat beside him, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the crate. You're safe now, she said softly. The dog's eyes opened, just a sliver, and found her face. He studied her the way you'd study a map before a long journey, memorizing landmarks, checking for danger. Then, slowly, his tail thumped once against the blanket. Amara smiled despite herself. For a long moment, the kitchen was quiet except for the crackle of the stove and the wind rattling the windows outside. Then the dog's head lifted sharply, his ears swiveled toward the front window. His body went still, not relaxed, but listening, alert. Amara froze. What is it? The dog didn't bark, didn't growl, just stared at the window, muscles tense as if waiting for a signal only he could hear. Outside, the wind howled. The streetlight flickered, and somewhere in the distance, faint but distinct, came the low rumble of a car engine idling too long in one place. Amara's stomach dropped. She glanced at Dayun, who had gone pale. Maybe it's nothing, Dayun whispered. But Amara wasn't sure anymore. She looked down at the dog, still staring at the window, still waiting. And for the first time, she wondered, did I rescue a life or step into someone else's? 3 mornings later, Amara unlocked the soup kitchen's front door and froze. The dog was sitting on the steps, not sprawled, not begging, sitting, upright, composed, like he'd been taught manners by someone who didn't tolerate slouching. His posture was military neat, shoulders square, paws aligned. His dark eyes tracked her movements as she stepped outside, but he didn't move, didn't bark, just waited. You came back, Amara whispered. Her heart did something complicated, relief tangled with unease. She set down a bowl of water, half expecting him to lunge for it. Instead, he stood slowly, walked to the bowl with measured steps, and drank. Not desperately, deliberately. When he finished, he sat again, eyes returning to her face. Amara crouched beside him, studying him in the pale morning light. That's when she noticed. His coat was clean. Not just dry, brushed. The frost-damaged fur she'd wrapped in towels 3 nights ago now gleamed black and smooth, as if someone had spent careful time running a comb through it. And the collar plate, JH21, looked freshly polished, the engraved letters sharp and clear. Amara's stomach tightened. Dayun, she called through the open door. Her neighbor appeared a moment later, dish towel in hand, and stopped mid-step when she saw the dog. He's back, Amara said quietly. Dayun walked closer, her expression unreadable. She circled the dog slowly, taking in the clean coat, the polished collar, the unnatural stillness. Amara, Dayun said finally, her voice low. Someone groomed him. I know. And returned him. Amara didn't answer. Dayun crouched beside her, eyes locked on the dog. That means someone's been watching. They knew where you brought him. They knew he'd come back here. Or he chose to, Amara said, though even she wasn't sure she believed it. The dog tilted his head slightly, as if listening to their conversation, weighing their words. Then he stood and repositioned himself, not beside Amara, but between her and the street. His body angled outward, shoulders squared toward the road, ears alert, protective. Dayun exhaled slowly. Amara. That's not random. By midday, Amara had started a new habit, logging. She pulled out an old notebook from beneath the register, one she'd used for supply orders, and began writing down observations like she was documenting a case. Time, weather, the dog's behavior, any strangers she saw lingering too long outside the window. Day 1 post-return, dog arrived 6:47 a.m., calm. Positioned himself facing street. No aggressive behavior, coat clean, collar polished. Day 1, 11:30 a.m., 2 men across street, dark coats, standing still, watching. She underlined the last line twice. It was the kind of habit she'd learned years ago during community organizing trainings. Document everything, because memory fades and details matter. If something went wrong, she'd have a record. If something went right, she'd know what worked. But this didn't feel like organizing. This felt like surveillance. That afternoon, Amara turned her nervous energy into something productive. She cleared space on the bulletin board near the soup kitchen entrance and pinned up a handmade poster. Winter Safety Basics. Beneath the heading, she wrote in clear block letters, signs of hypothermia, shivering stops, confusion, slurred speech, shallow breathing, what to do, get to shelter, remove wet clothes, warm gradually, blankets, warm drinks, not hot baths, call for help, emergency contacts, Mountain View Veterinary, animals, community health clinic, people, 24-hour shelter, hotline. She added a small note at the bottom. If you find someone or something in trouble, help the right way. Slow and steady saves lives. Dayun read it over her shoulder and nodded approvingly. People need this. I needed it, Amara said quietly. 3 nights ago, I almost panicked. If I hadn't remembered that training... She didn't finish the sentence. The dog, resting near the stove, lifted his head and watched her. His tail thumped once against the floor. A quiet acknowledgement. Just before closing, Amara glanced out the front window and her breath caught. The 2 men were back. They stood across the street under the broken streetlight, both in dark coats, hands in pockets, faces shadowed. They weren't moving, weren't talking, just standing, still as statues, scanning the building like they were measuring it, counting windows, checking exits. Amara's pulse hammered in her ears. She stepped back from the window, heart racing, and glanced toward Dayun, who had gone pale. They're watching us, Dayun whispered. I know. Amara's hands trembled as she reached for her phone, ready to call. Who? The police? And say what? 2 men are standing on a public street? But before she could decide, the dog moved. He stood slowly, walked to the window, and sat directly in front of it. His posture was rigid, controlled. His ears lifted, sharp and focused. And then he stared, directly at the 2 men across the street. Not barking, not growling, just staring, like he knew them. Amara's throat went dry. One of the men shifted slightly, tilting his head as if acknowledging the dog's gaze. Then, without a word, both men turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows between buildings. The dog remained at the window for a long moment, ears still lifted, body still tense. Then he returned to his spot by the stove and lay down, resting his head on his paws as if nothing had happened. Amara sank into a chair, hands shaking. Dayun sat beside her, voice barely a whisper. Amara, that dog knows them. Amara nodded slowly, staring at JH-21's polished collar glinting in the firelight. I know, she said. And somewhere deep in her chest, a new question formed, one she wasn't sure she wanted answered. What exactly did I bring into my kitchen? The men didn't leave. By mid-afternoon, they were still there, shifted positions, leaning against different buildings, but never fully gone. One stood near the bus stop that no one used anymore. The other lingered by the bodega across the street, hands in pockets, face unreadable, watching. Amara slid the chain lock into place and stepped back from the door. Her hands were steadier than she expected, but her pulse hadn't slowed since morning. Dayun appeared at her shoulder, voice calm but firm. Don't confront them. Don't go outside. Don't give them a reason to approach. I help people, Dayun, Amara said quietly. That's what I do. I don't turn people away. This isn't about help. Dayun's eyes were sharp, focused. This is about control, and you don't give control to people who won't identify themselves. Amara exhaled slowly, nodding. Document everything, Dayun continued. Times, descriptions, movements. Keep the lights on. Make it clear you're aware of them. And keep distance. Always. Amara pulled out her notebook again and added another entry. Day 2, 2:15 p.m. 2 men still present. 1 at bus stop, 1 near bodega. No direct approach. Dog remains calm. She underlined calm twice because it bothered her. The dog should be agitated. Protective dogs bark. They pace. They show tension. But JH21 just sat by the window, ears forward, body still, watching the men the way you'd watch a clock. Patient, knowing the alarm would come eventually. By late afternoon, the soup kitchen filled with its usual guests, people who'd been outside too long, who needed warmth and food and a place to sit without being asked to buy something first. Amara moved through the space with practiced efficiency, ladling soup, handing out bread, refilling thermoses, but her mind kept drifting to the men outside. Amara, an older man named Leon, called from the corner table. You look worried. She forced a smile. Just a long day. Cold's getting worse, Leon said, pulling his scarf tighter. Heard the shelters are full downtown. Amara nodded and took the opportunity to shift gears, to focus on something she could control. Listen up, everyone, she said, raising her voice just enough to carry across the room. Temperature's dropping again tonight. If you're staying outside, here's what you need to know. She walked to the bulletin board and pointed to the winter safety poster. Layering works better than one thick coat. Keep your clothes dry. Wet fabric pulls heat away from your body faster than cold air does. If you start shivering and then suddenly stop, that's a warning sign. Your body's shutting down. Get inside. Get help. A younger woman near the stove spoke up. What if the shelters are full? Then you come here, Amara said without hesitation. We'll figure it out. Dayun shot her a look. Be careful what you promise, but didn't contradict her. There's a warming center at St. Michael's Church on 5th, Amara continued. They stay open all night when it drops below freezing. And if you find someone confused or stumbling, don't assume they're drunk. Check for hypothermia. Call someone. Leon nodded slowly. You're good people, Amara. She smiled, but the warmth didn't quite reach her chest, because across the street, through the window, the 2 men were still there. Just before dusk, something shifted. Amara watched through the glass as one of the men glanced toward the soup kitchen window. His gaze found the dog, still sitting in the same spot, still watching, and something passed across his face. Recognition. The man's shoulders tensed slightly. He tilted his head toward his companion and said something Amara couldn't hear. The second man's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the dog, and then, barely perceptible, he nodded. Not a greeting, not a threat, a confirmation. The dog's ears twitched, but he didn't move, didn't bark, just kept watching, as if this entire exchange was expected. Amara's stomach turned. They know him, she whispered. Dayun, standing beside her, said nothing. Darkness came early in winter, and with it, the cold deepened. Amara turned on every light in the soup kitchen. Overhead, fluorescents, table lamps, even the string lights Dayun had hung last Christmas. The whole place glowed warm and visible, a deliberate signal. We see you, we're awake, we're not hiding. The guests filtered out one by one, bundled in layers, clutching thermoses of hot tea. Leon was the last to leave, pausing at the door. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. Amara nodded. "I'm sure." He didn't look convinced, but he left anyway. The door clicked shut. The lock turned. The chain slid into place. And then, silence. Just Amara, Daeun, and the dog. The minutes stretched long. The wind rattled the windows. The stove crackled softly. Then, at exactly 8:47 p.m., the knock came. Firm, controlled. 3 deliberate strikes against the door, not rushed, not angry, steady. Amara's heart slammed against her ribs. Daeun grabbed her arm. "Don't open it." But Amara's eyes were on the dog. JH-21 stood slowly, ears lifted, body alert but not tense. He walked to the door and sat directly in front of it. Posture perfect, gaze fixed on the wood. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he just waited, like he'd been waiting all along. Amara's throat went dry. The knock came again. Same rhythm, same measured force. And in that moment, Amara understood. The dog wasn't afraid of the knock. He was expecting it. Amara's hand trembled as she leaned toward the peephole. Through the distorted glass, she saw him clearly, a man in a dark suit, tailored but not flashy, standing with his hands visible at his sides. No weapon drawn, no aggressive posture, just controlled stillness. Behind him, another man, broader, quieter, stood with his back to the door, scanning the street. The man at the door tilted his head slightly, as if he knew she was watching. "Amara," he said. His voice was low, calm, deliberate. Her heart stopped. She hadn't given her name, not to him, not to anyone outside this building. Daeun's hand tightened on her shoulder. "Don't open it," she whispered. Amara kept the chain locked and cracked the door just enough to speak through the gap. "Who are you?" The man didn't move closer, didn't push, just met her gaze through the narrow opening with eyes that were steady, unreadable. "My name is Hyunwoo," he said. "I'm here because you saved my dog." Amara's throat went dry. "Your dog?" Hyunwoo's expression didn't shift. "Yes." "Then why didn't you come sooner?" Amara's voice was sharper than she intended. "Why let him freeze in an alley? Why no microchip? Why a code instead of a name?" Hyunwoo tilted his head slightly, as if weighing how much truth to give. "He wasn't supposed to be out there that night. Someone made a mistake. I corrected it." "That's not an answer." "No," Hyunwoo agreed quietly. "It's not." The second man shifted behind him, glancing back briefly, then returning his attention to the street. Amara's pulse hammered in her ears. She glanced down at the dog, JH-21, still sitting calmly by the door, watching Hyunwoo through the gap like they were old colleagues meeting after a long absence. "What kind of dog gets trained without a chip?" Amara pressed. "What kind of owner uses codes instead of names?" Hyunwoo didn't flinch. "The kind who works in places where names are liabilities." He paused, then added, "He's trained for search and protection. Not for fighting, not for harm, for emergencies." "Emergencies like what?" "Like finding people when no one else will look for them." Amara's stomach twisted. She wanted to shut the door, walk away, pretend none of this was happening. But something in Hyunwoo's voice, something quiet and worn, kept her standing there. "Why did he come back here?" she asked. Hyunwoo's gaze shifted briefly to the dog, then returned to Amara. "Because he decided you were safe." "I don't understand." "You acted correctly under pressure," Hyunwoo said simply. "You didn't panic. You didn't rush. You made the right choices when most people wouldn't have." He paused. "He remembers that." Amara's hands tightened on the doorframe. "So what? You want him back?" "No." The answer was so quiet, so unexpected that Amara froze. Hyunwoo continued, voice steady. "I want you to understand something first." He reached slowly into his coat, hands still visible, movements deliberate, and pulled out a slim folder. He held it up so she could see it through the gap. "I'm not here to threaten you," he said. "I'm not here to take anything from you." "Then why are you here?" Hyunwoo's eyes didn't waver. "Because I need help, and I can't ask the police without starting a war in the open." Amara's breath caught. Daeun leaned closer, voice sharp. What kind of help? Hyunwoo addressed Daeun directly, respectful. The kind that doesn't make headlines, the kind that moves quietly through community channels. He slid the folder forward carefully, stopping just at the edge of the door frame. There's a family, a mother, 2 children. They're being targeted by men who use fear as currency. I can move them to safety, but not through official routes, not without drawing attention that would put more people at risk. Amara stared at the folder, her mind racing. What does this have to do with me? She asked. Hyunwoo's voice softened, just slightly. Because you already do the work. You know the shelters, the clinics, the churches, the safe places where people go when they have nowhere else. He paused. And because my dog trusts you. Amara's chest tightened. She glanced at Daeun, whose face had gone pale but thoughtful. You're asking me to hide someone, Amara said slowly. No. Hyunwoo shook his head. I'm asking you to help coordinate safe passage, warm transit, a clinic check-in, a vetted shelter drop, nothing dramatic, nothing illegal. Just competent care. Amara's hand shook as she looked down at the folder. Hyunwoo took a step back, giving her space. I grew up hungry, he said quietly. I'm not proud of every decision I made after that, but I respect one thing, people who protect the weak in a storm. He let that sit for a moment, then added, a family needs help tonight, and the only safe path is through places like yours. Amara didn't take the folder, not yet. Explain, she said through the cracked door. Who's targeting them, and why can't you go to the police? Hyunwoo's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. There are men, businessmen, officially, who use fear to collect debts that were never legitimate in the first place. They threaten families, they show up at schools, they make people disappear quietly. Amara's stomach turned. The police can't act without evidence that holds up in court, Hyunwoo continued. And if I bring this to them openly, it sparks a confrontation. Public, violent, more people get hurt. He paused. But I will cooperate with legitimate channels quietly. I'll work with social services, shelters, legal advocates, anyone who can help without turning this into a war. Daeun stepped forward, voice sharp. You're asking us to trust you. I'm asking you to trust the process, Hyunwoo corrected. I'm not asking you to hide crimes. I'm asking you to coordinate safe passage for people who need protection. Amara's mind raced. She thought about the families who came through the soup kitchen every week. People running from violence, from eviction, from systems that didn't see them. She'd helped before, quietly, carefully, but this felt different. I have a boundary, Amara said, her voice steady now. I won't hide crimes. I won't move anyone unless it's for safety and documented properly. If this family needs help, we do it the right way. Clinic check-in, vetted shelter partner, transparent records, no shortcuts. Hyunwoo nodded once. Agreed. Daeun crossed her arms. And no weapons inside this building. No intimidation. No one pressures Amara or anyone else here. We do this only if it's legal, transparent, and protective. Hyunwoo's gaze shifted to Daeun, and for the first time, something like respect flickered across his face. Understood. Amara finally took the folder through the gap in the door. She opened it carefully. Inside, 3 pages, names, ages. A brief summary, nothing detailed, but enough. A mother, 7-year-old daughter, 9-year-old son. Currently staying in a motel that wasn't safe anymore. No photos, just information. What do you need from me? Amara asked. Tonight they'll arrive here around 10, Hyunwoo said. I need you to do what you already do. Provide warmth, food, a moment of stability. Then we move them to St. Michael's shelter. I've already contacted the director. She's expecting them. Amara glanced at Daeun, who was reading over her shoulder. We'll need to check them for injuries, Daeun said. Make sure they're not hypothermic. Winter nights like this, kids especially can go downhill fast. Hyunwoo inclined his head. I'll bring blankets, thermoses, whatever you need. We have supplies, Amara said quickly, but I want a name, someone at St. Michael's I can call to verify. Sister Grace, Hyunwoo said without hesitation. She runs the family wing. Amara pulled out her phone and dialed. The line rang twice before a warm, tired voice answered, "St. Michael's Shelter, Sister Grace speaking." "Sister Grace, this is Amara from the Maple Street Soup Kitchen. I'm calling about a family transfer tonight." There was a pause, then a sigh of recognition. "Yes, I spoke with someone earlier. We have space. 3 beds in the family wing. Warm, safe, and private." Amara's shoulders loosened slightly. "Thank you." "Bring them whenever they're ready," Sister Grace said. "And Amara, be careful." The line clicked off. Amara looked at Hyunwoo through the gap in the door. "Okay, we'll help, but we do this my way." Hyunwoo stepped back, hands still visible. "Your way is the only way this works." Over the next hour, Amara and Daeun moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, setting up a protocol they'd used before, though never under circumstances quite like this. "Emergency intake basics," Daeun muttered, pulling out the checklist they'd created years ago for winter overflow nights. First, warm drinks, not hot. Second, check for frostbite, confusion, or lethargy. Third, gradual warming with blankets. Fourth, assess safety and next steps. Amara added notes to the margins. No sudden movements. Keep voices calm. Let them speak first. Don't overwhelm with questions. The dog, JH21, positioned himself near the doorway, sitting upright, ears alert. He didn't pace, didn't whine, just watched, as if his presence alone could prevent panic. Amara glanced at him and felt an odd sense of reassurance. Whatever else Hyunwoo was, he'd trained this dog to stabilize, not to threaten. At 9:47 p.m., Hyunwoo's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, read the screen, and his face tightened. The second man behind him shifted, glancing back toward the street. "What is it?" Amara asked, still standing behind the chained door. Hyunwoo's voice was quiet, controlled. "They're closer than I thought." Amara's pulse spiked. "The people following the family?" Hyunwoo nodded once. "We need to move faster." Daeun stepped forward. "How much faster?" "They'll be here in 20 minutes, Hyunwoo said. "Not an hour." Amara's mind raced. 20 minutes to prepare. 20 minutes to make sure everything was ready. 20 minutes to decide if kindness could stay clean under pressure. She looked at Daeun, who met her gaze with steady determination. "We can do this," Daeun said quietly. "We've done it before." Amara nodded, then turned back to Hyunwoo. "Bring them in the back entrance," she said. "Lights off in the front. And if anyone else shows up, anyone, you handle it outside, not in here." Hyunwoo inclined his head. "Agreed." Amara closed the door, slid the chain back into place, and exhaled slowly. Tonight would test whether kindness could stay clean under pressure. And she wasn't sure yet what the answer would be. The family arrived at 10:03 p.m., a mother with hollow eyes and trembling hands, a 7-year-old girl clutching a stuffed rabbit, a 9-year-old boy who walked too close to his mother, scanning every shadow. Amara met them at the back door with blankets and warm tea. No questions, no pressure, just quiet competence. Within 20 minutes, they were checked for injuries, wrapped in dry layers, and drinking broth by the stove. The children sat close together, whispering in a language Amara didn't speak, but the tone was unmistakable. "Are we safe?" Daeun knelt beside the mother, speaking softly in her limited Korean, gesturing toward the shelter information. The mother nodded, eyes filling with cautious relief. By 10:47 p.m., Hyunwoo's second man had escorted the family out the back entrance into a warm van bound for St. Michael's. No drama, no sirens, just careful transit. When the door closed behind them, Amara exhaled for the first time in an hour. Hyunwoo remained standing near the front window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the street. Amara expected him to leave, to disappear the way people with power always did after getting what they wanted. Instead, he turned to face her. "I need to ask you something else," he said. Amara tensed. "If this is about money—" "It's not." Daeun stepped closer, arms crossed. "Then what?" Hyunwoo chose his words carefully. "I want you to teach my people something they never learned." Amara frowned. "Teach them what?" "How to help without harming," Hyunwoo said. "How to respond to emergencies without panic. how to serve without control. The words hung in the air, strange and unexpected. Amara stared at him. You want training? Hyunwoo nodded once. Tonight, you helped us move one family safely. You did it the right way. Documented, transparent, with boundaries. I want that to be the standard, not the exception. Amara's mind raced. You can't buy morality. No, Hyunwoo agreed. But I can fund the conditions that make it possible. And I can create accountability. He gestured toward the soup kitchen. I want to fund this place legitimately for a year, through proper channels, with receipts and audits. In exchange, you build a small program here. Winter safety basics, animal first aid, community resource mapping, real help. Amara's chest tightened. Why? Hyunwoo's expression didn't change. Because the people I work with grew up like I did. Hungry, afraid, taught that survival means taking before someone takes from you. I can't undo that overnight, but I can give them a different framework. Show them what competence looks like when it's built on care instead of fear. He paused, then added quietly, then teach it. Build it. Make it measurable. Daeun's eyes narrowed. This isn't charity. You're asking us to legitimize you. No, Hyunwoo said. I'm asking you to build something real. If it helps my reputation, that's secondary. If it doesn't, the program still exists. Amara looked at Daeun, whose face was unreadable. We'd need safeguards, Daeun said slowly. Receipts for every dollar, third-party audits, partnerships with established organizations, churches, clinics, legal advocates, signage that makes it clear this is a community resource, not a private operation. Hyunwoo inclined his head. Agreed. And volunteer training, Daeun continued. Anyone who works here needs to understand boundaries, confidentiality, and safety protocols. No exceptions. Agreed. Amara stepped forward, voice firm. And you don't get to use this place for power. No presence inside during open hours, no intimidating displays. No leveraging the kitchen to control the neighborhood. Hyunwoo met her gaze without flinching. Agreed. Amara studied him, searching for cracks in the calm exterior, some sign that this was a performance, but his expression remained steady, almost tired. Why now? She asked. Why tonight? Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Because that family reminded me of my mother, and because my dog chose you. Not because you were powerful, but because you were careful. He glanced toward JH-21, still sitting by the door, watching everything with quiet alertness. I respect one thing, Hyunwoo said. People who protect the weak in a storm. Everything else is negotiable. Amara's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this wasn't just a clever way to launder reputation through good deeds. But doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. How do I know this is real change? She asked quietly. And not just strategy? Hyunwoo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. Plain, no logo, just a name and phone number. Call this number tomorrow, he said. It's a legal advocacy group. They'll verify everything I've told you. They'll also help you set up the funding structure so it's transparent and protected. He set the card on the counter between them. I'm not asking you to trust me, Hyunwoo said. I'm asking you to trust the process and to build something that outlasts both of us. Amara picked up the card, turning it over in her hands. Daeun leaned close and whispered, We can do this, but we do it our way, with oversight, with boundaries. Amara nodded slowly. Then the dog, JH-21, stood from his post by the door and walked across the room. He stopped in front of Amara, sat down, and gently laid his head on her foot, not demanding, not begging, just resting there, like a vote cast in silence. Amara looked down at him, then back at Hyunwoo. Okay, she said quietly, we'll try. 3 weeks later, on a night when the temperature plunged below freezing again, the second call came. Hyunwoo's voice was calm but urgent. Another family. Same situation. Can you help? Amara glanced at Daeun, who was already pulling supplies from the emergency pantry. Blankets, thermoses, dry socks. How long? Amara asked. 30 minutes. We'll be ready. This time, Amara knew the protocol by heart. She set up the back room with efficiency born from practice. Blankets folded within arm's reach, thermoses of warm, not hot, herbal tea lined up on the counter, dry clothing sorted by size. The wood stove glowed steadily, far enough from the seating area to prevent burns, but close enough to radiate gentle warmth. Dayun taped a handwritten checklist to the wall. Cold stress response protocol. Remove wet clothing immediately. Wrap in dry blankets. Layer gradually offer warm liquids. No caffeine, no alcohol. Monitor for confusion, slurred speech, or lethargy. If symptoms worsen, call emergency services. At 10:42 p.m., the back door opened. The mother entered first, younger than Amara expected, maybe mid-20s, with a toddler bundled against her chest and a 6-year-old boy holding her hand. Their clothes were damp from snow. The child's lips had a faint blue tinge. Amara moved quickly but calmly. Come sit by the warmth. Not too close, just close enough. The mother hesitated, scanning the room like she was checking for exits. You're safe here, Dayun said in soft, steady Korean. We're going to help you get warm, then take you somewhere safer, okay? The mother nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. Amara knelt beside the 6-year-old. Hi, I'm Amara. Can I help you take off your wet jacket? The boy looked at his mother, who nodded. Slowly, he let Amara peel away the soaked outer layer. Beneath it, his shirt was damp. His hands were stiff and cold. Dayun, Amara said quietly. Dry clothes, small size. Dayun moved immediately, pulling a clean sweater and sweatpants from the donation bin they kept stocked now, part of the new program Hyunwoo had funded. Within 10 minutes, the family was wrapped in blankets, sipping warm chamomile tea, their wet clothes hung by the stove to dry. The toddler had stopped shivering, a good sign. The boy's color was returning. Hyunwoo stood near the front window, hands behind his back, not interfering, just watching the street. The dog, JH21, sat near the back door, ears forward, body still. At 11:08 p.m., the dog's posture changed. His ears swiveled toward the front of the building. His head tilted slightly, listening to something Amara couldn't hear. Hyunwoo noticed immediately. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then glanced at Amara. Someone's outside, he said quietly. Not ours. Amara's pulse spiked. How close? Across the street, watching. Dayun moved to the mother's side, voice calm. We're going to move a little faster, okay? Nothing to worry about. Just staying careful. The mother's eyes widened, but she nodded. Amara checked the clinic contact on her phone. Dr. Yoon, who ran the late-night walk-in clinic 4 blocks away. She'd already called ahead. Van's ready, Hyunwoo said. But we wait for the right moment. What moment? Amara asked. The dog stood, walked to the window, and sat again. His eyes tracked something moving in the shadows across the street. Then, after a long pause, he returned to the back door and sat facing it. Now, Hyunwoo said. The transfer happened in less than 3 minutes. Amara led the family to the back door. Dayun carried the toddler, still wrapped in a blanket. Hyunwoo's second man waited by the van, engine running, heat blasting. Clinic first, Amara said, handing Dr. Yoon's contact info to the driver. Then St. Michael's. Sister Grace is expecting them. The mother looked back at Amara, eyes full of questions she couldn't ask. You'll be safe, Amara said. I promise. The van door closed. The vehicle pulled away quietly, headlights cutting through the snow. Amara stood in the alley, breath puffing white in the cold, and watched until the van turned the corner and disappeared. When she came back inside, Hyunwoo was still by the window. They're gone, he said. The watchers, they didn't follow. Amara exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. Dayun locked the back door and leaned against it. That, she said, was terrifying. But it worked, Amara said quietly. Hyunwoo turned to face them. Because you kept them calm. Because you followed the steps. Because you didn't rush. Amara looked at the checklist still taped to the wall, the same protocol they'd used for the dog. adapted for people, simple, clear, effective. For the first time, Amara saw the thread that connected everything. It wasn't about power, it wasn't about money or influence or fear. It was about competence, about knowing what to do in a crisis and doing it without drama. The dog walked over and sat beside her, resting his weight lightly against her leg. Amara looked down at him, then at Daeun, then at Hyunwoo. "This isn't a story about mafia power," she said slowly. "Is it?" Hyunwoo's expression softened, just slightly. "No," he said. "It's about community power, and what happens when people who know how to care are given the resources to do it right." Amara nodded, something settling in her chest. For the first time, she believed it. 3 months later, the soup kitchen had changed. Not in ways that screamed wealth or power, nothing flashy, nothing meant to impress. Just quiet. Practical upgrades that made the work sustainable. Insulated doors that didn't let the cold creep in during service hours. An emergency pantry stocked with blankets, dry clothes, first aid supplies, and shelf-stable food. A water heater that actually worked. New thermoses that kept tea warm for hours. Amara ran her hand along the edge of the new shelving and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Stability. Daeun appeared in the doorway, holding a stack of flyers. "Ready for tomorrow?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Amara said. The first workshop launched on a Saturday morning in late winter. 15 people showed up, more than Amara expected. Some were neighbors, some were volunteers from other community organizations. A few were people Amara had never met, sent by word of mouth. And in the back row, 2 of Hyunwoo's people sat quietly, notebooks open, listening. Amara stood at the front of the room, nerves thrumming beneath her calm exterior, and began. "This isn't about being a hero," she said. "It's about being competent. It's about knowing what to do when someone's in trouble and doing it the right way." She walked them through the basics, cold safety essentials, recognizing hypothermia, no shivering, confusion, slurred speech, shallow breathing, the danger of sudden heat, why hot baths can cause shock, gradual warming, blankets, warm drinks, shelter first, animal first aid, how to approach a frightened or injured animal safely, signs of cold exposure in pets, stiff limbs, lethargy, frost on fur, when to call a vet versus when you can stabilize at home, resource mapping, where to find shelters, clinics, warming centers, how to connect people to help without shame, emergency contacts to keep in your phone. Daeun took over for the final segment, how to help without harming. "Boundaries aren't cold," Daeun said. "They're protective. You can care deeply about someone and still say no to things that cross lines. You can offer help and still require transparency. Compassion needs systems, not just feelings." One of Hyunwoo's people raised a hand. "What if someone refuses help?" Daeun didn't hesitate. "You respect that. You let them know the door is open if they change their mind. But you don't force it. Forcing help is control, not care." Amara watched the room, faces nodding, pens scratching notes, and felt something shift. This was real. This was working. After the workshop, Amara sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the schedule Daeun had taped to the wall. Monthly workshops, first Saturday, 10 a.m. Emergency intake protocol, posted by backdoor, volunteer training. Every other Wednesday audit review, quarterly with third-party oversight, everything documented, everything transparent, everything built to last beyond her. The dog, JH21, walked over and sat beside her chair. He rested his chin on the armrest, dark eyes watching her with quiet patience. Amara reached down and scratched behind his ears. "You started all this, didn't you?" The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. She thought back to that night in the alley. Frost on his fur, shallow breathing, the moment she chose slow care over fast panic. She'd thought she was just saving a dog, but the dog had carried something else with him, a message. People can change direction when they're met with boundaries and humanity. Not everyone would, not everyone could, but some, like Hyunwoo, like the people who now sat quietly in workshops taking notes. Some would choose a different path if given structure instead of judgment. Amara didn't romanticize it. Hyunwoo wasn't a saint. His past didn't disappear because he funded a soup kitchen, but he'd kept his promises. No presence during open hours, no intimidation, no using the kitchen as a stage for power. He stayed distant, respectful, accountable. And that, Amara realized, was its own kind of transformation. That evening, as the last workshop participants filtered out into the cold, a woman approached Amara hesitantly. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said. "I found a dog last week, shivering, scared." "I remembered what you said. Shelter first, slow warmth, call a professional. He's okay now, because I didn't panic." Amara's throat tightened. "You did great." The woman smiled, pulled her coat tighter, and walked out into the winter evening. Dayun appeared beside Amara, watching through the window. "You know what this is, right?" "What?" "A lighthouse." Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" Dayun gestured toward the glowing windows, the people walking away with flyers tucked under their arms, the dog sitting calmly by the stove. "Kindness doesn't invite danger when it's paired with wisdom," Dayun said. "It becomes a lighthouse. People see it from a distance. Some are drawn to it because they need shelter. Some are drawn to it because they want to learn how to build their own. Either way, it changes the landscape." Amara looked at the soup kitchen, warm, lit, steady, and felt the truth of it settle into her bones. This wasn't a story about a mafia boss redeeming himself. It was a story about a community organizer who refused to compromise her values, even when power knocked on her door. It was a story about boundaries and care working together, not in opposition. It was a story about a dog who survived the cold and taught everyone around him that survival isn't just about enduring. It's about choosing the right people to trust. And maybe, Amara thought, that was the most incredible thing of all. The dog, JH21, lifted his head, ears swiveling toward the door. Amara glanced out the window and saw Hyunwoo's car pulling away from the curb, headlights cutting through the snow. He didn't stop, didn't wave, just drove past, keeping his distance like he'd promised. The dog watched until the car disappeared, then returned to his spot by the stove, curling into a quiet, watchful rest. Amara locked the door, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, the warmth held steady. When spring came, the soup kitchen added a small plaque beside the door. "Help the right way. Slow and steady saves lives." Beneath it, someone had taped a photo. A large black dog sitting calmly beside a woman in a yellow sweater, both of them looking at the camera with quiet confidence. No names, no explanations, just proof that kindness, when paired with wisdom, doesn't just survive the cold. It builds something that lasts,